Hey, Dodger fans, this is a bonus episode, a special crossover I did with Javi from Locked On Padres. As you know, Vince and I did an episode last night. We will do another episode tonight. This really is a bonus of me and Javi previewing the Dodgers-Padres series that starts this evening. I let Javi host this because, he needs this in his life. So enjoy this special bonus crossover episode, and we will talk to you tonight after Game 1 of the Dodgers-Padres series.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to an edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, as well as the Locked On Dodgers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Tuesday, September 24th. That's right, October is right around the corner. I am one of your hosts, the currently one speaking, Javier Reyes. You can find me on Twitter at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, or at LO_Padres for updates on the show. And I'm joined by the supervillain of all supervillains. He's been on this podcast, considering I've just called him a supervillain a lot of times over these many years, but dare I say, this has been the most equal footing we've been on in a long time. It is my good buddy, Jeff Snyder, co-host of Locked On Dodgers.
Yeah, let me clarify. The Dodgers and Padres are on pretty close to equal footing. You and I aren't even close, bro. It is. I just got to ask, was Javipeno with one eye already taken on Twitter?
Yes, I think it. So I made this. I think I was playing like Xbox back in high school, and my friend was just like, "Yo, what about this?" And I assume that the one eye was already taken, or he might have told me to do two. I don't know. It was a long time ago. I used Mojave Desert.
It's like your Yahoo Mail username, and
yeah,
you just stuck with it.
Hey, it's much better than some of my other usernames. I've got like Charger Boy 117 is a username on another thing.
That's what I've always called you,
the Charger Boy.
Yeah.
Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah, the right stay can make you a fan of any city, including your baseball rival city. That's appropriate for today. Book today on Booking.com, the whole official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. Today, we are going to be previewing this series. We got to talk the biggest storylines. We got to get big into the pitching matchups because, wow, this series does have some weight to it, which is usually not the case for a regular season end of series between the Padres and Dodgers, in the sense that the National League West did not go fully 100% chalk this year, in the sense that the Dodgers are 3 games ahead of the Padres. Almost was only 2, but of course, my arch nemesis Mookie Betts, who I said yesterday, for the record, I hate him, just in case, let me just clarify, for some people who are confused. I hate that the Red Sox traded him. I thought it was stupid. And it is still stupid. Go look at the return that the Red Sox got for arguably the best player they've had.
I think it was a great trade, personally. I think they did a really good job. I think they should do it again.
Hopefully not. But man, Jeff, it has been a wild ride. The last time Jeff and I talked, it was back in May. It was following, just to give Padres fans a reminder, this was not the series of the Jerickson Profar Will Smith incident, but the series that we next had after that. And a lot has changed. Back then, the Padres were a exciting team, but very inconsistent. Below 500, going back and forth. Looked like the Dodgers had everything locked up as usual, at least in terms of the National League West. And nowadays, my gosh, everything has changed. The Dodgers have had a little bit of a rough go of things in terms of injuries, and Walker Buehler not being able to come back to his usual Cy Young caliber self, the Tyler Glasnow injury, a whole bunch, but also the craziness of the Shohei Ohtani situation. I really thought everybody go look at Jeff's tweets about that. So I'm not gonna lie, very wholesome. I really appreciate your tweets about that. Really crazy stuff, man. But like, is this the first time that on paper both of these teams, where they are standing, are like pretty equal in terms of just like just the roster and how everybody's been playing? Do you think?
I don't know about the first time. I'd have to look back through the history, but I mean, because the fact is the Padres were really, really good in 2020, and obviously in 2022 they beat the Dodgers in the postseason. So it's hard to base it on a full regular season, because the Dodgers were 22 games better than the Padres in the 2022 regular season, but clearly the talent level was closer than that. I'll go to my grave saying the Dodgers were the better team that year. It didn't matter. They lost, but I do think it was closer than the standing showed. And we saw that, if the Dodgers were actually 22 games better talent wise, then even with a slump that series, they still would have won the series, and they didn't. So it was closer. I think one of the big things, and you could probably speak more to this, it seems to me like the Padres are getting healthy at the right time of the season, and almost enough to make me think maybe a team should just have 10 starters and say half of you are sitting out the first half and half of you are sitting out the second half, and then we'll flip coins for the postseason, because suddenly, all the stuff that was going on, Yu Darvish, injury wise and personal wise and everything, seems to have worked out really well for the Padres. Now he's back and he's fresh, and Joe Musgrove is back now. It seems like it's worked out pretty well.
Yeah, and that's actually a great point. Like, the Dodgers have, obviously, so they still have plenty of stars, if not more than the Dodgers in terms of just the star power. But this year, you're right, they are getting healthy at the right time, and that's what I think was so interesting about the trade deadline for the Padres, which clearly serves as like the full turning point. They've been, playing good ball even before then, but then they really kicked off another level. Jackson Merrill ascending to be the Rookie of the Year favorite. We'll see how that shakes up. The bullpen additions, that all of them have like a below sub 2.5 ERA. Even Martin Perez, even if it's a little bit fluky, a little bit fraudulent with the high FIP, nonetheless, everything has worked out for them, and they didn't really target a pitcher. The Dodgers did, and Jack Flaherty. I'd like to ask you about him in a second, but the Padres didn't prioritize that. They prioritized bullpen. And at the time, my hope was that hopefully, and I say that hopefully because this has not been a front office that has been consistent. So it wouldn't have shocked me if they went full bullpen and we're like, wait, who's going to start like game 2 of a series? And instead, Joe Musgrove comes back very, very healthy. The velo is all the way back up. Yu Darvish, on top of coming back healthy from the personal incident as well, he's been back, and he just had a really great start against the White Sox yesterday. But just really everyone's getting healthy, and it's a crazy deep lineup as well. The deepest that I've seen the Padres have, at least since I've been covering them. They've had a little bit of Dodger magic. And what I mean by that is the Dodgers the past few years have been very good at getting the best out of players, and it's almost become a meme, right, Jeff? Jason Hayward, they bring him in last year. Everyone's like, what happens? Those spring training videos come in, you see the swing change, and what happens? He has a very solid season. And the Padres did the same thing. And they did it with Donovan Solano, who I would argue should never have been a free agent, but they did it with Kyle Higashioka. They brought in some other players as well. And then Jurickson Profar has been arguably the most singularly surprising player in baseball. So it's really been like a lot of things have absolutely fallen the Padres' way this year. And it's weird because it really never really shakes up like that, at least in terms of the regular season. And then the postseason, sort of the same thing, but they've just been up and down. Like you said, in 2022, they had 2020 as well. But then 23, they were like the least clutch team, at least by Fangraphs, since I was born, one of the 3 least clutch teams since 1996. And then this year, they have the best winning percentage in terms of making comebacks. They have like 43 comeback wins this year. So,
but that's all Jackson Merrill, right?
It's been a lot, Jackson Merrill, man. He's been amazing. On a level that I did not expect, especially when it comes to hitting for power. I just did not expect for him to do this. Last time they played, I believe he had the great defensive play too, robbing Ohtani probably of a double, maybe a triple. That was nuts. And this is a kid who never played center field. Just, again, they're kind of getting like the Tatis rookie season from Jackson Merrill right now, except that he's played, knock on wood, every game, or at least been healthy the full season through. So it's been really amazing to watch, but that does not mean that the Dodgers haven't had their own share of things. Obviously, Ohtani is the biggest thing. That has been, look, we talked preseason, got to admit I was wrong, in our long table discussion, our round table with every National League West host, we talked about MVP favorites. And one of the things that I thought was that Ohtani, on top of not pitching, and on top of the fact that the Dodgers were expected to be really stacked, I think that sometimes occasionally plays its way, not as much in the NBA and the NFL, but plays its way to like, oh, well, the whole team is good. So why is he going to have the same thing? Little did we know that Shohei Ohtani would have the best season, basically bar none, by a DH in the history of baseball. So these two teams have both had like incredible stuff go their way, even if the Dodgers win record isn't as dominant as it usually is.
Yeah, and Ohtani has had to. The reason he's going to be the MVP in part is because the team hasn't really been stacked because Mookie Betts missed almost 2 months. Freddie Freeman has had a down year. Max Muncy missed 3 months. Will Smith has had a down year. Like, this stacked lineup has been mostly Shohei Ohtani and the rest of the team. And it's been pretty remarkable what he's done. And offensively, the Dodgers are getting healthy, hopefully going into the postseason with a fully healthy team. The pitching staff is just totally a different question because, the Padres approach of get everybody healthy right on time. The Dodgers, unfortunately, have taken the opposite approach of, I might be pitching game 4 of a series for the Dodgers at this point. That's it's a bummer, but hopefully the offense can carry them a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It just shows you kind of a reminder that the game's got to be played. The Dodgers rotation looked stupid before the season started, and it still has been very, very good. It's just that, like you said, wrong timing right now with the Glasnow injury. Yamamoto's been out for a while. He's, trying to work his way back as well. So we're going to talk about that and a couple more storylines in just a second, guys. But first, I need to take a moment to talk to you about the fine, fine folks over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, carpet, whatever you need and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, they have you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is, guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning you're burning rubber, not cash. Whoopsies. Sorry, eBay Motors. I love you. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only. Available to U.S. customers. Go check it out. And just like that, everybody, we are back here into the crossover extravaganza. Padres, Dodgers, thriving and vibing as always. Jeff, I want to ask though, when it comes to, you just brought up a great point, which is that Shohei Ohtani, don't get me wrong. If you just look at wins above replacement, Mookie Betts, he's played 100 games, Freddie Freeman, but there was that period where it really felt like it was just him. We didn't know exactly what we were going to get. Like Gavin Lux had a little bit of a brief period. And then I guess you could say Teoscar Hernandez this year has been pretty consistent, 130 WRC plus. He has 31 home runs. He was in the home run derby as well, but it's not nearly as stacked as usual. And then you just talked about the pitching. What can you tell us, I think, about the health of the pitching and how much you really probably wish that Shohei Ohtani was able to pitch right now?
Yeah, it would be nice to have, although with the way things gone for the Dodgers this year, Ohtani would have had 4 Tommy John surgeries this year if he was pitching. The pitching has potential to be okay. Jack Flaherty, who the Dodgers traded for the trade deadline, as you mentioned, other than one bad start against the Braves, he's been even better than he was with the Tigers. He was the best starting pitcher traded at the trade deadline, and he has pitched about the way they expected him to. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, other than that first start in Korea, he's been really good. He had kind of a clunker yesterday, but very uncharacteristic. The command wasn't there on Sunday, and that's something that because it's so uncharacteristic, you don't stress too much about it. For me, the big question with Yamamoto is how deep we'll be able to go in a game, because as you mentioned, he is coming back from the shoulder injury. He's probably built up. He threw 73 pitches on Sunday, probably could have gone 85, but the quality wasn't there. So I would guess by the NLDS, he'll be built up to 90 or 95 pitches. And if he could be efficient, that's plenty, 5 or 6 innings probably on that. You could do a lot worse than Jack Flaherty and Yoshinobu Yamamoto as your top 2 starters. And teams have been very successful in the postseason with worse top 2 starters. The question is, there's a question of, are those guys going to show up and be good? And then there's who's going to pitch after that, because at this point, it's probably Walker Buehler and Landon Knack, a rookie and a guy who is coming back from Tommy John surgery and for the most part this year has sucked. And that's, not ideal. Walker Buehler has pitched a little bit better lately and has shown signs. He's definitely not the Walker Buehler of the past. But with this Dodgers offense, like if Buehler can give you 5 innings and only allow 3 or 4 runs, Dodgers have a pretty good chance to win a game like that, even in the postseason, especially, when you look at if he's the third or fourth starter, then maybe you're going against the third or fourth starter for the other team, depending on how things line up. So, all those things come into play. But yeah, I mean, Landon Knack is going to have to step up. Walker Buehler is going to have to step up. There's a chance Tony Gonsolin could be back. He's been making rehab starts. He's probably not going to pitch a single inning in the regular season this year, and then he might be on the postseason roster and might be taking down some innings. I doubt they'd have him as a starter, at least in the first round of the playoffs, just because he hasn't faced major league hitters in over a year. But I think if he is a long reliever in the NLDS and then pitches well, if they make it to the NLCS, maybe they do slot him into the rotation. Clayton Kershaw is still an outside chance to pitch in the postseason. I don't really think he probably will. So there's a lot of questions, and I've said this about the Dodgers a few times over the years about different things. There's a lot of questions, and not all the answers to those questions have to be bad. There's potential for the starting pitching to be decent, but if the Dodgers are going to be successful this postseason, it's probably going to have to be because the offense showed up big time.
Yeah, and I think I also want to touch on just that the pitching staff. Like we've seen teams. I mean, just last year. Like I know that everybody loves to talk about it now, but it's not like Jordan Montgomery was some super stud. You know what I mean? Good pitcher, but not a super stud. And what does he do? He blows up in the postseason, does it? So I could absolutely see that taking place. And frankly, this sounds dumb, but I feel like Yamamoto has been a little bit underrated this year. I know he hasn't pitched enough. I understand that but for a guy who everybody was worrying about, like, how is he going to transition from Japan to Major League Baseball? Even though if you read up on it, there's literally no other pitcher who has this type of mix and the way that he throws. He's been electric this year. I will say, just to toot my own horn, don't know why, cannot pitch against the Padres. He has a 12 ERA in 2 starts against them so far. It was that first start in Korea, and then the next time they faced him, and obviously he went on to IL. So that's the situation there. But I am curious, what can you tell us about the Dodgers bullpen? Speaking of, since the starting pitching is going to be a little bit weird, because I do know that we were talking about, earlier, the first segment, the Dodgers magic, with the Jason Hayward thing, and they turn players. It seems like they did that again with Michael Kopech, who seems to have just been a beast. I loved that move that when they made it, I was like, oh, struggling pitching prospect for the White Sox. Yeah, I'll take a flyer on a team that can't seem to develop anybody and put it with the team that's been basically about as good as developing anybody, if not better.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thrilled about the Michael Kopech trade. Give me a guy with that stuff and the Dodgers' ability to get the most out of relief pitchers. You look at over the years, Evan Phillips, Ryan Brazier, all these guys. Brusdar Graterol was supposed to go to the Red Sox in the Mookie Betts trade. The Red Sox said, no, we don't want him. So the Dodgers said, okay, we'll fix him too. It was that they've had a lot of success with that. The bullpen is a big question mark here because they've got a lot of guys who've been really good in their careers. They've got 4 guys who've been closers, Evan Phillips, Blake Trinan, Daniel Hudson, and whoever the 4th one is that I'm forgetting off the top of my head right now. You'd think I would be more familiar with the Dodgers roster. Are you familiar with the Dodgers? They play baseball.
Alex Messia?
No, who's the other one that I'm thinking of?
Ben Casparius, Brett Honeywell. I'm just looking at random pictures.
Yeah, maybe it's. I guess maybe I was thinking of Michael Kopech. Joe Kelly was never really. I think I was probably just thinking of Kopech, that he's been a closer at times with the White Sox. But they've got guys who can get the job done for sure. And then this year Alex Vesia has been really good. Anthony Bonda might be back. He punched a wall and broke his hand, and but he's rehabbing, throwing sim games and stuff. So he might be back to give them another lefty in the bullpen. There's potential for this to be a pretty good bullpen. But then you've got Joe Kelly, who on any given day could either be the best relief pitcher in baseball or absolutely the worst pitcher you've ever seen, counting your little league team. And you just don't know what you're going to get from him. Brett Honeywell Jr. has had a really solid season. I don't think he is good enough to pitch in the postseason because he doesn't have strikeout stuff. I think strikeout stuff is more important in the postseason. If I'm making the roster, he's not on it. But that means you have to have somebody to replace him with. And so that will come down to, is Bonda coming back? Is Gonsolin coming back? These guys, some of it is just going to be about health. If you end up with Brett Honeywell on your postseason pitching staff, there's a decent chance that things didn't go great health-wise. There's question marks. There's Ben Kasperius, who pitched 3 innings on Sunday and struck out 5 batters in 3 innings. He struggled with command early and then settled in and looked pretty good. Is he an option for the postseason roster? He might be. They've had so many injuries to their pitching staff that it's hard enough to guess even who's going to be on the Dodgers postseason pitching staff, let alone how well they're going to pitch at this point. Because there's like when you're talking about a guy like Tony Gonsolin, who hasn't thrown a single pitch in the big leagues this year, might be on the postseason roster. That's how much this roster is in flux at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Feels like we're in a bizarre world right now because on the Padres side of things, everything looks great. We talked about, Musgrove and Darvish coming back, looking really solid lately. And you also have, just in case, something goes wrong with the rotation, maybe if a starter were to get lit up, Martin Perez, well, yes, the FIP is high. I understand that. 2.61 ERA, though, in 48 innings pitched. And one good thing, though, is he has increased his strikeout rate. So, that's one thing to hope for. But the biggest things have been Tanner Scott has a 2.19 in 24 innings, Jason Adam 1.11, and Bryant Hoeing a 0.87. So all of the stuff they've done. So while the Padres do have some questions with their bullpen, Yuki Matsui, very, very rough. I think he has some good talent, and I think he could get better, but has been dreadful in high leverage situations. And then you've got Robert Suarez, who's an all-star, and he's been the team's closer all year, has hit a bit of a rough patch lately. But the good news about this team is that a guy like Jason Adam, which I talked about on my podcast yesterday, he's been a guy who's worked in committee with the Rays. So he could be a guy that we could be thrown into the closer role or not. So they have so many options, which is what I think is so good about this Padres bullpen. Even rookie Jeremiah Estrada, he could get some strikeouts. I still think Suarez is someone that you can rely on as long as you're not pitching against Bryce Harper for the second inning in a row. As long as you do that, they should be good. So there's a lot to get into there. And again, it's very weird being in a position because I remember when the Padres played the Dodgers in 2020, where they lost Mike Clevenger and Dinelson Lamet, and they had to throw out Zach Davies as their number 1 starter, and they had some other random people because Chris Paddock wasn't any good. And now, again, that's how quickly things can change. We're going to get into, though, the pitching matchups of this series, and then a couple thoughts, as well as my thought on why I'm a little bit scared of the Dodgers. That's right. I'm going to talk about it, guys, in just a second. But first, I want to talk to you about a couple of sponsors, including Booking.com. This episode, of course, is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. That's right. If you're in San Diego, you want to stay in LA, don't worry. Booking.com has you covered. The official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today, as well as another sponsor, FanDuel. That's right, folks. FanDuel, very, very cool. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're in past week 3. By the time everybody's listening to this, you got some Monday night games by the time Jeff and I are recording this, but still, we're in week 4. And when you get into the middle of the game, if you get a hunch, you're checking out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page. Wherever you place your bets, they've got you covered if you're feeling a certain way. And you'll get started with $200 of bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Go check it out. Official #1 sportsbook in this lovely America. Go check it out. And just like that, thriving and vibing into the last segment of this show, Padres, Dodgers, Jeff Snyder, Javier Reyes. I have a take. And it's both a compliment and a negative thing. Mostly a compliment, though. Every year, since I've been covering this show, but at least, and certainly a long time now, everybody knows it's almost become a cliche now. Dodgers have been pretty bad in the postseason. It's been talked about a lot. My thing is this. Nobody's expecting them the same way that they have in the past, which scares me because sports are stupid. And what happens is when you're not expecting something, then it rears around. So what would make more sense than the Dodgers, especially with this just intoxicating like in a good way, vibe that Shohei Ohtani has brought to this team. Been just this joyous athlete to watch, 50-50 club member, making history. Yes, it started a little bit weird at the beginning of the year. We don't have to get into that. That was a real weird thing. And everybody go check out Locked On Dodgers for Jeff's breakdown of that, I imagine. But all in all, you have that amazing, amazing thing coming for Ohtani. And a lot of people aren't expecting it as much. So part of me is wondering, could this be good for the Dodgers that nobody's expecting them as much to go as far as previous years where they were a 105 win team? Last year, they were struggling and they still won 100 plus games, right? So do you think that everybody's, getting excited about the Phillies and the good vibes that they have and everything and their obnoxious ass fan base? Oh, and then the Padres, they've been this comeback, kids all year, and maybe even the Brewers, and you've got the D-backs still in there who made the World Series last year. Do you think there's a little bit of like are we forgetting about the Dodgers vibe here, or are you really, really concerned?
No, none of the above. I think, you didn't come up with a good question. No, I don't think it matters one way or the other, because the fact is, for all that stuff you just talked about, the Dodgers currently have the best record in Major League Baseball, and the reason that they aren't going to win 100 games this year is because every team has shown up. People ripped on Mookie Betts in spring training when he said teams are going to treat the games against us like they're World Series. And then yet it's been absolutely true. The Dodgers have lost 16 series this year, and the teams that beat them in their next series have combined for a 61 win pace. They've been terrible in their next series because teams go all out to beat the Dodgers. And if the Dodgers play the Padres in the postseason, there's no way the Padres are going to think, oh, the Dodgers had a down year, we can overlook them. No team is going to overlook them. It's going to be the same thing as always. I also think it's overblown. The Dodgers have been bad in the postseason. Yes, the last two postseasons, the Dodgers have been bad. Overall, they played the World Series 3 times in the last 7 years. They won it once. Another time, the other team cheated to beat them. There's been the Dodgers have had a whole lot of postseason success over the years. You got to have a short memory to think that they're always bad in the postseason, because that's literally just the last 2 years. 2021, they beat the team that won 107 games in the regular season. They beat them in the postseason, and that's despite losing Clayton Kershaw and Max Muncy both in the last series of the regular season. Then they ran out of gas against the Braves. But baseball is a hard sport to play. I don't think expectations matter at all in what the results are going to be, because every team is going to show up in the postseason ready to play. And honestly, you mentioned earlier the difference in MVP voting between the different sports. I think there are a lot of baseball fans who misunderstand the nature of baseball and think that it's more like football or basketball. You think, oh, if you're more fired up, you're going to be better. It just doesn't matter. What you got to do is go out and hit the pitch that the pitcher throws, and you got to throw a pitch that the other team can't hit. And that, being extra motivated doesn't help. Nobody has ever, I felt good today. I was really motivated. I don't like that other team, so I decided to hit a home run. No, you got a good pitch, you hit it. That happens whether you're motivated or not motivated. It doesn't really matter. And baseball is so much more variable than those other sports, because in football, you have the same quarterback and the same running back and the same receivers and the same offensive line every single game. In basketball, you've got the same team, and you can choose who gets to shoot the ball. In football, you can choose who you throw the ball to. In baseball, you got to go with the lineup. Okay, whose turn is it to bat this inning? Oh, crap. It's, Dodgers don't have any bad players, so I can't think of anybody. But, you just have to bat whoever's in the lineup. And sometimes 30% success in baseball is good. 30% in basketball is bad. In football, it's bad. And so there's more variability, more failure, and less control over who gets to take the at-bats, who gets to throw the pitches. And so, baseball is a weird sport. It's why the best team in baseball almost never wins the World Series. Less than 25% of the time does the best team win the World Series. That's not the same as in football and basketball. And so, for me, I am always terrified going into the postseason, because it doesn't help to be the best team in baseball. It helps a little bit, not a lot. And so this year, the Dodgers are going. If there's one thing we've learned, Javi, you and me, over the last few years, it's that how a team does against another team in the regular season has no bearing on how they will do against them in the postseason. I'm old enough to remember 1988. The Dodgers went 1-10 against the Mets in the regular season and then beat them in the NLCS on their way to win the World Series. I'm old enough to remember 2022 when the Dodgers kicked the crap out of the Padres all season long, and then the Padres beat the Dodgers in the postseason. It does not matter. What matters is, hey, who got hot? Who had Jordan Montgomery getting hot? Who had, Madison Bumgarner, 2014, he was a good pitcher. He wasn't nearly as good as he was in the 2014 postseason. And that's why the Giants weren't a good team in 2014. They were a solid team that got an otherworldly stretch from a pitcher. And so maybe this is the year that Joe Musgrove is that guy, or Landon Knack is that guy. You just can't guess. Steve Pearce was the MVP of the 2018 World Series.
Yeah.
Quick, tell me anything else you know about Steve Pearce, Javi. Tell me one thing.
I picked him up off my waiver wire fantasy baseball, the Orioles once.
Can you spell his last name?
I think so. Is it P.I.?
No, it's P-E-A-R-C-E. You can't even spell the name of the guy who won the 2018 MVP of the World Series because baseball is a stupid sport that we love for some reason that you just have no idea what's going to happen. And that is the best and worst news for every baseball fan heading into this postseason is that none of us has any idea what's going to happen, Javi. And if the Dodgers play the Padres, you know what? Dodgers might sweep the Padres, win 3 games 36-0 because who gives a crap how good the Padres starting pitching has been. And maybe Kike Hernandez gets the save in one of those games. Who knows? It's a dumb sport, and that's why I'm always constantly terrified in October.
That was some of your finest work, Jeff.
I do this every day on Locked On Dodgers, 5 days a week, baby.
Everybody go check out Locked On Dodgers really quickly. Let's run through the pitching matchups. I'm not even going to bother retorting. That was expertly well done. Michael King versus Landon Knack, who every time I hear his name, for my nerds out there, I think of the PlayStation game Knack. Michael King has been a guy who quietly is probably going to finish in the top 5 of Cy Young voting. Yes, he doesn't have the same strikeout potential as other guys on the Padres, especially Dylan Cease. But when you look at his ERA, has been amazing. I think it was a 4.9 in the first month of the season. And after that has been about as consistent. Hasn't had over like a 2.7 since then. He's been amazing. Really, really good pitcher. And then Landon Knack, Jeff already talked about him. We'll see. I don't know.
Michael King doesn't have the same strikeout potential because all I remember about him is when he struck out 36 Dodgers in 5 innings or whatever. When him and Glasnow went against, it was like a contest to see who could make the least contact between the two teams.
No, yeah, you're probably right. It's just that Dylan Cease is a little bit better. That's all I'm saying. But for the most part, I think what's so fun about Michael King is also that he's just has progressively gotten better throughout the course of the season. And the scary thing about him was used to give up home runs. I guess he just decided not to anymore. So
we'll see about that.
Yeah, we'll see about that in this series, and especially come the postseason. Another thing to watch is going to be for the Padres. It's going to be kind of instead of just who will be on the roster in the postseason, what order. I think it's going to be interesting, and I actually wouldn't be surprised if they're still trying to figure that out themselves because Michael King has never pitched this many innings in his career, so that should be something to follow along with. Then next game, Jack Flaherty versus Dylan Cease. That's kind of like the sexy match, 2 guys, Jack Flaherty having a real, kind of under-discussed, amazing bounce-back season for a guy who looked like his arm was falling off, not too long ago, especially with the Cardinals. Goes to Detroit, was amazing. Like you said, number 1 pitching guy, starting pitcher acquired at the deadline. He's been great. Dylan Cease, little bit up and down, but he looks like he's back on the up lately. 10 strikeout game the other day with no runs and only a couple of hits. That's going to still be a really, really good game. Curious to see how that one goes. And then lastly, we've got Joe Musgrove versus Walker Buehler, a matchup that on paper, if you told me heading into the season, that would be another super sexy matchup, but Buehler, not quite what was supposed to happen. It seems like it is dare I say, the single worst development for the Padres the Dodgers this season is that Walker Buehler was a potential Cy Young guy, along with Glasnow, along with Yamamoto. Just doesn't seem to have been able to make his way back. It looks like it's been really frustrating, but nonetheless, still a matchup to watch for sure. Jeff, it's been fun, man. Do you have any final takes and maybe even soapboxes to get on top of?
No more soapboxes. I will say though, Dodgers are up by 3 games right now. Which, and I've said this on Locked On Dodgers several times, I would always rather be the team that's up by 3 than down by 3, especially with 6 games left. Coming into the series, the Padres kind of need to sweep this series.
Yeah.
Because if the Dodgers even win one game, that puts them up by 2 games heading into the final series when the Dodgers get to play the Rockies again. And then the Padres have to play the D-backs who are, fighting for their playoff lives, fighting for seeding, all that stuff. There is, it makes me feel better as a Dodger fan to know that, you know what, one win in the next 3 days probably locks up the division, locks up a first round bye, all those things that the Dodgers are playing for right now. But I feel pretty good about winning 2 of them because I feel like the offense is in a good place right now. And I think it'll be fun to see what the Dodgers can do against some pretty good Padres pitchers.
Padres have been really on fire lately. We'll see. The series is in LA. And I will say, you were just talking about anybody could beat anybody. I also would not be shocked if the D-backs get swept somewhere, but the Padres sweep the Dodgers and all of a sudden the Braves are back into it. I mean, I know you don't follow as much, but the American League wild card has just been on like something. I don't know what's been going on over there. All of a sudden, I don't know if you know, the Detroit Tigers are good now.
Yeah.
Again, baseball is so stupid, guys. But what's not stupid is following it and watching it. Nah, maybe that can be stupid too sometimes, depending on how you consume
it. The dumbest thing we do. I mean, talking about it 5 days a week, man, we're idiots.
Yes, we are. But either way, really looking forward to this series, as always, for every series. I'm curious to see if we get a little bit, not just the 2 teams playing well rivalry, but the 2 teams playing well. And there's been some bad blood before where, the Will Smith thing and in previous series, but, you can tell that these teams, there's a little bit extra edge there as opposed to Dodgers, Giants, Dodgers, D-backs, whatnot. So looking forward to see if any sparks fly in any regard there. But everybody, with that all being said, that is about it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast and the Locked On Dodgers podcast. Go check out Jeff on Twitter at Snidog, SNIDOG. Great, simple classic handle. And as then you've got me at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO. You can also check out my other work at justbaseball.com, where I write about the Padres and general baseball, and my other podcast, Baseball versus the World. Until that next time, stay faithful, my Friar Faithful homies, and stay dastardly, my Dodgers brethren. We'll see you next time.